Good evening. Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina is the place where thousands of young Marines have trained for the day when they will serve and perhaps sacrifice for their country. But what they didn't know was that many of them may also have been sacrificing their health by drinking and bathing in what turned out to be highly contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. Scientists and federal investigators now believe Camp Lejeune may be the worst example of water contamination this country has ever seen. It's estimated that between 500,000 to 1 million Marines and their families were exposed to high levels of chemicals over a nearly 30-year period. And what's most shocking is that Camp Lejeune officials allegedly knew their water was contaminated, yet it took them years to track the source of the contamination and close down the wells. Getting to the bottom of what happened has become this man's mission. Jerry Ensminger spent 24 years in the Marine Corps as a drill sergeant. He trained over 2,000 new recruits.
I instilled in those kids our motto, which is Semper Fidelis, which is Latin for always faithful. And I also instilled in them our slogan, that we take care of our own.
But Ensminger believes the Marine Corps was not taking care of its own. It all began when he and his pregnant wife were living at Camp Lejeune in the 1970s. After their daughter Janie was born, they lived a typical military life. Until one day when Janie was 6 years old. That's when doctors diagnosed the drill sergeant's daughter with cancer, leukemia, and she was about to face years of painful treatment.
Janie's chemotherapy made her extremely sick. Her treatments turned her into a freak. She would gain 30-some pounds when she was on the steroids. She lost her hair. The other kids at school picked on her. She'd come home crying, frustrated, depressed. I'd have to take her out in the evenings and walk and try to make sense of this thing and tell her that these kids don't understand. But it didn't make it any better for her. Janie went through hell. And all of us that loved her, we went through hell with her.
For 2 years, Janie suffered round after round of chemotherapy, but ultimately lost her battle in 1985. She was 9 years old.
The day she died, I started to cry. And she looked up at me, and she said, "Stop it." And I said, "Stop what?" She said, "Stop crying." I said, "I can't help it, honey. I love you." She says, "I know." And she says, "I love you too." That was the last word she said to me.
While his daughter was dying, the Marine sergeant, who was used to a world of order, tried to do everything he could to overcome his feeling of helplessness.
And I researched her mother's family history, my family history. I found no other child that had ever been diagnosed with leukemia. This was just out of the blue. That nagging question stayed with me throughout her illness, through her death, and all those years after.
After Janie's death, the drill sergeant's life fell apart. His marriage collapsed. He was plagued by facts that just didn't add up. Then one night, 12 years after his daughter's death, he happened to catch a local newscast about water contamination on his former base at Camp Lejeune.
I was coming out of the kitchen with a plate of food to watch the evening news. And the lead story on the news, the reporter said that the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry had released their public health assessment for Camp Lejeune. And the chemicals that they had found in the drinking water were linked to childhood, or possibly linked to childhood cancer, primarily leukemia. I dropped my plate right there in the living room floor.
That report set him on a decade-long search for the truth. According to Ensminger, it all began here, at a Camp Lejeune housing complex called Tarawa Terrace. This was where he was living when his wife was pregnant with Janie. It is also where testing uncovered high levels of toxic chemicals in the drinking water.
The most highly contaminated well on Tarawa Terrace was Tarawa Terrace's well number 26, which is located right over there by that sign right there where it says Tarawa Terrace 1.
That well has long since been closed and locked. This yellow post, the only remaining symbol of what was. But long before it was sealed, testing confirmed a toxic chemical in the water, a chemical called PCE, a substance used in dry cleaning. PCE in drinking water has been linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, bladder and breast cancer, and leukemia, the cancer that killed Jamie.
The highest levels that they found in the Tarawa Terrace water system, which is where I lived, was 215 parts per billion.
Which is high.
Yes, sir. Because the levels that are considered safe now for these chemicals is 5 parts per billion.
The contamination came from discarded dry cleaning chemicals that leaked through the sandy soil into the aquifer that supplies the base. The dry cleaner is just a stone's throw from base property. The business has since changed names and is under new management. This map from the base shows the proximity of the contaminated well to the housing area at Tarawa Terrace, where Sergeant Ensminger and his family lived. But while this contamination was coming from off base, there was other toxic dumping taking place on the base itself. A back area of the post known as Lot 203 had been the dumping ground since the base opened in the 1940s. Everything from cleaning solvents to drums of now banned pesticide DDT were discarded here. Former Marine Joe Paliotti worked for 16 years dumping toxins on the lots, as he acknowledged to a local TV station.
To come down there, we used to dump it. DDT, cleaning fluid, batteries, transformers, vehicles, anything the surplus the government had. I knew sooner or later something was going to happen. Even after I retired, I used to say somebody's going to pay for it.
This interview was taped in 2004, a week before Paliotti died of cancer. Cancer he thought was caused by working around the toxins. Jerry Ensminger also spoke to him shortly before his death.
And he told me they had a truck